Again, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Lawrence. Let me welcome you to today's meeting of the 2021 Supervisory District Lines Advisory Commission. On behalf of all the 15-member commission, I'd like to thank all of you for your interest in this important process. It's not an overstatement to say that we, the commission, and all of you are helping to ensure that the fundamentals of democracy are alive and well here in San Mateo County. Our work today will help determine which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together in those 5 districts. San Mateo County, as you know, is divided into 5 districts, and voters in each district elect a member to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. Now you may ask yourself, why is this important? 1, how and where districts are drawn can shape communities' ability to elect representatives of their choice. 2, districts are substantially equal in population, help to ensure residents and have equal access to representation. And 3, revisions to our district boundaries have lasting impact. They will remain with us in effect for the next decade. It's important to remember that members of our Board of Supervisors are full-time elected officials who oversee a $3 billion plus budget. The budget funds programs that include social services, public health protection, housing, roads and infrastructure, county parks, elections, and public safety. The Board of Supervisors also acts as a primary local government for residents who live in unincorporated areas. Board members serve on numerous regional agencies that set policy for transportation, environmental protection, and other important issues. So net, it's a very important role in our county. So we look forward to hearing from all of you today about what you consider your community and where you might draw the lines that help us define the districts for the next decade. Again, thank you all for being here today. I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I take the roll call, let me just mention the following. The meeting will be interpreted into Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. To access the audio channel for these 3 devices, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen on your taskbar. There will be a menu that will appear, and then you will be able to select your language of choice. I'm going to ask a few folks to interpret this into Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. Victor, please proceed.
Thank you, Suki. Muy buenas tardes a todos ustedes. Les queremos dejar saber que hoy esta reunión será interpretada al español, mandarín y el tagalo. Para poder acceder al canal audio de estos 3 idiomas, usted tendrá que hacer clic en el icono del globo, es decir, un mundo situado al fondo de su pantalla en la barra de tareas de Zoom. Después aparecerá un menú y usted podrá seleccionar el idioma que desee. And now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Wei Quang Teng.
谢谢。Thank you. 这个网上会议呢，今天晚上呢将提供了西班牙语、国语普通话和他加入菲律宾话的口译服务。要使用这3种语言的翻译频道，请你点击你荧幕底部的任务栏上的地球图标按钮，然后呢就会出现这个选单，请从那个选单里面呢选择那个 Chinese 中文，这样子呢你就可以听到那个国语普通话的同声翻译。谢谢大家 ，Thank you.
And now Carol will introduce these instructions in Tagalog. Carol, I think you're on mute.
Let me see if I can unmute her.
Okay.
Ms. Mendoza, please click unmute.
Okay. Magandang hapon po. Ang pagpupulong na ito ay isasalin sa 3 wika. Sa Espanyol, sa Incheck at sa Tagalog. Para matinig nyo ang channel kung saan meron itong 3 lengguwahe na ito, i-click lang po ang litrato ng mundo na nasa ibaba ng inyong screen sa Zoom, sa ibaba. Meron po doon na menu na lalabas at mapipili nyo kung anong wika ang inyong gusto. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. I'm going to start the interpretation options now.
Should I unmute?
Yeah, please put yourself on mute. Yes. Thank you. Okay, I'll take the roll call now, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Bandrapalli,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Chan is absent. Commissioner Monzon Ruiz is absent. Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Salander,
I'm here.
here. Commissioner Azos is absent. Commissioner Bledsoe,
Present.
thank you. Commissioner Davis is absent. Commissioner Albert,
Present.
okay. Commissioner Dinan is absent. Commissioner Espinoza,
Present.
thank you. Commissioner Chow,
Good evening. I'm here. Thank you.
Commissioner Guerrero is absent. Vice Chair Romero,
Present.
thank you. And Chair Lawrence,
Present.
thank you. Go ahead, proceed, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so for the next item on our agenda is a motion to approve the agenda for this evening. Excuse me, I'm skipping over item 2. Any inputs from the public comments from the public at this point or communications?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. When you hear your name called, I will send you a request to unmute your mic. And once you accept the request, you can begin speaking. These instructions are being provided live in Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog channel. If you wish to hear this meeting in any of these 3 languages, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select the appropriate language. So I do see 2 hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Clerk,
Oh.
I'll just clarify, this is public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
That's correct. Thank you.
That's correct.
So once again, if you wish to speak on non-agenda items, please raise your hand. Okay, Mr. Thomas Weissmuller, I'm going to give you the permission to speak. Please proceed.
Yeah, this is Thomas Weissmuller, the city of San Mateo. My recommendations on the redistricting is to not split any cities or towns in San Mateo County. Currently, we have 5 cities that have 2 supervisorial districts. San Bruno and South San Francisco are districts 1 and 5. Belmont is districts 2 and 3. And Redwood City and Menlo Park are districts 3 and 4. I think it'd be better if we kept each city within 1 supervisorial district to the maximum extent possible. Thank you.
Weissmuller. Next speaker is Ray Buenaventura. Mr. Buenaventura, please proceed.
Thank you, Suki, and good evening to the members of this body. I want to first thank you all for engaging in this kind of work. I know this is going to be quite tedious, sometimes controversial, and but I expect and hope that we all come to a result that is acceptable for the community and especially for Daly City. I want to emphasize our concern of making sure that Daly City is intact and that there are no efforts to dilute the population, the vote, or the borders that constitute this district. And so I just wanted to express our concern for the Daly City community, for District 5, to make sure that we are represented and that there are no efforts that will result in the dilution of our efforts, our communities, and our voting power. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for the record, Mr. Chair, we do have Commissioner Chan present now. And I did receive one written comment from Rafael Avendaño. Good afternoon. I believe that the redistricting process of District 4 should help a community secure meaningful representation at the table. It is important to have community members who are elected for us live, work, and be from the community. It is important to have people who share common social, cultural, racial, economic, geographic concerns. A good redistricting process will be open and transparent in all ways and will create videos, JPEGs, and infographics of the process. It's important to also host forums and record them for members that cannot attend. It's also important to allow community members to ask questions and continue to give input all throughout the process. This participation is vital, being that redistricting only happens every 10 years. The redistricting of District 4 will be very important for the next coming years, being that District 4 is culturally diverse district that is the youngest in the area. Thank you for receiving my public comment. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let me say thank you to the public members that attended. We certainly want to get your input and keep those in front of us at all times. Our next item on the agenda is agenda item number 3, which is to get a motion to accept the agenda for tonight.
I move to accept the agenda.
I second that.
And Mr. Chair, I do want to mention if we could include in the motion to postpone item number 4 to the next meeting. I'm still working on the minutes, so.
Okay, let's back up then to make sure we get it correctly. The motion is to accept item 3 and postpone any action on item 4 as the minutes have not been prepared. So now I'll ask for a new motion.
I move to accept the amended agenda.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Bandrapali,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Yeah.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay, and for the record, we have the following members who are absent. Commissioner Monzon Ruiz, Azos, Davis, Dinan, and Guerrero. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Next item is agenda item 4, approval of the minutes. Didn't give a date, so I'm not sure what.
So that's the item that was postponed, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Okay, so agenda item number 5. I'll turn this over to our Ms. Christine Parks to take us through a demonstration of the mapping tools.
Good evening again, commissioners, members of the public. My name is Kristen Parks. I am a consultant with the National Demographics Corporation. We are the firm of demographers hired to assist the county with the redistricting process, bringing our expertise in county redistricting and the mapping software and tools. So I'm going to do a short PowerPoint to provide the public with an overview of the redistricting process. And then I will do demonstrations of both of the online mapping software tools that we have available to us. So starting with an overview of what to expect with this process. As you are probably aware, the County of San Mateo is represented by a board of supervisors, 5 supervisors, and 5 supervisorial districts. These district lines were drawn in 2013. So every 10 years, we have a census. 2020 was our census year. And with that census information, we have to revisit these district boundaries. So the timeline for this process probably feels very short to you, and that is because it is. There were significant delays in receiving data from the Census Bureau. The data that normally would be released at the end of March was not released until August 12th to the states. So this is not something that's unique to San Mateo County or even California. All over the United States, everyone who's doing redistricting right now is struggling with the late release of the important data that we absolutely need to know how many people live in our communities. So San Mateo County has formed an advisory redistricting commission that met for the first time on August 25th and held the first public hearing on September 8th. So you'll notice today's date is on this table. Today is when we are expecting the state to release official redistricting data that we can actually use. You may have wondered, well, did this happen yet today? No, it hasn't. But those of us who are following this keep refreshing their website and hoping that maybe we'll see it before midnight. That being said, the data that we are required by law to use coming from the state of California is data that does an adjustment to what was already released by the Census Bureau. What that adjustment is related to incarcerated people. So people who are in state prisons in California, about 94,000 of them are being counted not in the location of the prison, but in their last known address. So that is one of the things that the state is changing. They are also going to not count people in federal prisons. So fingers are crossed that we get that data, if not tonight, this week. We're already engaged in a series of community workshops in San Mateo County. We are holding these virtually, but the idea is that we are giving every current district an opportunity to have a workshop to educate them about the redistricting process and give them the tools that they need to participate. What's going to happen in the month of October, coming up very soon, is that this commission is going to meet to review all of the draft maps. And we're hoping that many of these maps will be created and submitted by members of the public. Ultimately, the commissioners will identify one or more maps to recommend to the Board of Supervisors. At that point, the Board of Supervisors will hold public hearings, and these additional public hearings will give the public an opportunity to look at the maps being proposed and give their feedback on what they think of those maps. The board can then direct us, NDC, the consultants, to make any changes to the maps. And ultimately, it is the Board of Supervisors that has the authority to approve and select that final map. That will be the map that will have the boundaries for the next 10 years for San Mateo County supervisorial districts. The deadline that the county has is December 15th. They must adopt a map by December 15th. That is because we do have an election coming up in June of 2022, and it's necessary for the county registrar of voters to know who's in which district. So the full schedule is online, smcdistrictlines.org, and I encourage everyone to check out the website. So diving right into data, what I have here is the non-adjusted 2020 population data. This is what was released by the Census Bureau in August. And of course, this data will be adjusted slightly, but we do not expect to see any significant changes to it. So what you see is the 2020 population for each of the current districts. And the reason we care about this is because we are looking for each district to have a relatively equal population size. And based on the data that we had from August 12th, the ideal size of a district will be about 152,888 people. So the second line of this table that says deviation from ideal is just telling us how much off we are from that ideal size. So the districts that you see that have negative numbers in their deviation row, as districts 1, districts 4, and districts 5, that means that they have less population than that ideal number. And so when we're looking at district boundaries, those are districts that will likely need to expand their boundaries to include more population. Districts 2 and 3, you can see, are slightly overpopulated relative to the ideal and will likely need to give up some population to get closer to the ideal. Now, we are not going to be getting this all the way down to the exact perfect equal population across all 5 districts, but we're going to be looking at the total deviation. So as of 2020, that total deviation looked to be 9.73%. That's the number in red on the table. And the reason we're looking at that is because we do have a federal court case that says that a total deviation under 10% is presumptively constitutional. So it should be okay. Most of NDC's clients are aiming for significantly less total deviation. And just to clarify, when I say total deviation, I'm talking about the difference between the largest population district, so currently District 2, and the smallest population district, District 5. So the difference between those two relative to the ideal district size is how we get that total deviation. There's some additional data here on the voting age citizens so that you can see some of the racial and ethnic groups in the county. This becomes important when we are ensuring compliance with the Voting Rights Act. So to summarize all of that, and for folks who prefer to see things visually, what I'm showing you on this map is the 2 districts that were overpopulated relative to the ideal. That's District 2 and 3. They have red minus signs, meaning that they will have to lose some population, or they may have to lose some population as boundaries are adjusted. And the green plus signs are districts 1, 4, and 5, which will need to add or may need to add some population so that we can balance out across districts. So that's our baseline, our foundation for what we're working with. But we also have 2 important bodies of law, federal and state, that we must comply with. Federal law, of course, is absolutely supreme and must be considered first. Federal law says each of the 5 districts should have equal population, that we must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and that the drawing of district boundaries should not discriminate against or dilute the voting power of any protected class of voters. And that's why we look at race and ethnicity. However, federal law also says there should be no racial gerrymandering, which simply means that while we can look at race and ethnicity as one of the important factors to be considered when drawing boundaries, race cannot be the predominant factor or the only factor that we look at when drawing boundaries. Those are our federal guidelines. California also has a new state law, the Fair Maps Act, that is giving us a rank-ordered list of criteria that must be considered when drawing district boundaries. So this applies to every county that is going through this process in the state right now. We have to consider these in order. That's why they're numbered. The first thing is that districts should be contiguous, simply meaning that each district should be one whole piece. Everything should be connected to it. There shouldn't be any separate, disconnected parts of a district. That's basic. Second criterion is that we should minimize the divisions of neighborhoods and communities of interest. So this is highlighted on this slide because this is what we want to hear from the public about. We want to hear from the public about their neighborhoods and their communities that they do not want to be divided. The third criterion is to minimize the division of cities and towns and other places within the county. CDP just means census designated place. So any of those communities that might have a name for your mailing address, but it doesn't actually have its own city council or town council or census designated places. State law says when we're drawing district boundaries, we shouldn't divide up our cities and towns. We shouldn't divide up neighborhoods or communities of interest that the public has identified as being important communities that want to be represented just within one district. Those are the things we're going to focus on today. There are the fourth and fifth criteria. Fourth criteria is that boundaries should be easily identifiable. One way that we can accomplish that is by making sure district boundaries follow things that we already know about, like roads, highways, waterways. So that helps us make it easy for everyone to know which district they're in. And the last criterion that we are required to consider by California state law is compactness. Compact is also going back to that concept of the shape of the district. The district should be drawn in such a manner that it doesn't intentionally avoid one area of population to go around it and bypass it to include a farther away population. So that's how we, when we're thinking about maybe some of these strange shaped districts, not necessarily in San Mateo County, but that you've seen elsewhere, those would not meet this compactness requirement. Finally, in state law, we have one prohibition that we cannot favor or discriminate against a political party when drawing boundaries. One way that NDC makes it harder for you to do that, or harder for you to think about political parties, is that we don't show partisan data for you. So that's not even on the table to be considered, as it is prohibited by state law. That is a lot of legal information. I keep repeating it because it's important for the public to know exactly what guidelines there are for this process so that the public can make comments and participate in the most meaningful way possible. Now, I have listed here examples of other redistricting goals. And the reason that I have that here under number 3 in blue is just because we want to acknowledge that we're not limited to only considering what is set out by law. We can consider other factors that may be important in San Mateo County. However, we can only consider those other goals after we've addressed federal and state law and make sure that our other goals don't conflict in any way with the law. So we talked about minimizing the division of neighborhoods and communities of interest. Most of us are familiar with what a neighborhood is or what neighborhood we live in. We may not have heard the term community of interest before. That term is used frequently when we talk about redistricting, and state law actually gives it a definition. So when we're talking about a community of interest, we're simply talking about any community or any population in a geographic area that has common interests that can be social or economic. There are many ways to define what those shared interests are, but the important part here is that that community should be included within a single district, not divided up, so that it has a chance to be fairly represented on the Board of Supervisors. So community of interest is a community that wants to be in just one district because they have common interests and they feel that those interests will be best represented by having one supervisor. So there are lots of different examples of communities of interest, and I'll show you what's already been submitted as well for San Mateo County. But another example that we can give is this is a particular geographic area where many of the people have a shared language that they speak, a non-English language, perhaps have shared history, shared problems within the community, or shared issues that they want to bring to the Board of Supervisors to address with relevant policy. So asking yourself what defines your community, and if you're here listening to this meeting today, I want to encourage you to think through these questions. What community do you live in? What brings you together? And where are you? What are the boundaries of that community? And that community could be your neighborhood. It could be perhaps your town or your city. But usually when we're talking about communities, we are talking about smaller areas. And when we talk about districts, we're talking about a collection of communities, of neighborhoods, cities, and towns that are grouped together into one district. So working through these questions, asking yourself, would your community be best represented within a single district? I encourage you to speak during our public hearing tonight or submit your comments and your feedback through the SMC District Lines website or in any way that you would like to participate in this process. I'll show you how to map your community in just a moment. NDC has 2 online mapping tools that have been available to the public for a little bit of time now. These are tools that empower the public, not just to give feedback on maps that we draw, but they actually empower the public to draw the maps yourselves, which is really a wonderful opportunity. The online mapping tools, there are 2 of them. As soon as we get this official state of California data, we will also be creating even simpler paper-based mapping tools so that there's a map that you could actually draw on, color pencils, highlighters, what have you, on paper so that you could draw your community, your own district that you would like, or all 5 county districts. So we do not have those paper tools yet, but once we have the final data, which hopefully will be any day or any minute, we will get to work publishing the paper tools and make those available around the county for folks to be able to draw their maps, take a picture, email in that picture of their map, or put the map in the mail and send it to the commission for consideration. Every map that is submitted by a member of the public, whether you've just mapped your community or you've mapped all 5 districts, everything that you submit enters into the public record and will be considered by the commission as the commission is evaluating maps and district boundaries. So this is an incredible opportunity. It is something that creates a transparency in this process so that when the commission sits down to consider maps, they're not just considering maps that have been drawn by consultants, but hopefully lots of maps that are drawn by members of the public, community organizations. So I'm going to switch over to the browser so that I can show you these two mapping tools. So if you navigate to smcdistrictlines.org, this is the redistricting website where you can find all the information that you may ever want to have about redistricting in the county. There's some FAQs, a schedule. We are going to navigate to draw a map. We can get rid of this statewide database. And what we have here on the draw a map page are two online mapping tools. The first one is the easier tool. The second one is the more advanced tool. And some people get frustrated and say, why are you giving us this complex tool? And the answer is for complete transparency. We want the public to have access to the same tools that the demographers have. You don't have to use them, but we want to make them accessible to you. And I will show you how to use it. There are also YouTube videos here on the website, and we are working on making cheat sheets. This was an excellent suggestion made by one of the commissioners to help the public dive in quicker into these online mapping tools. So let's open District R first. When you open District R, you get taken to a page that is just an intro page, and you have two options. You can draw 5 districts, or you can draw a community. What I'm going to show you is drawing a community. So I'm going to click this red button. So immediately you see the boundary lines of San Mateo County here. And this is a map that you can click, hold down, and drag. You can zoom in and out using the arrows here. So I'm zooming, I'm dragging the map around. And if I want to identify my community, I can start painting it. So at the top right, you'll see a paintbrush icon, and it's going to paint in this blue color here. If I want to name my community, I can give it a name. And I can describe my community, what brings it together. Maybe I want to draw a community around the bay, and I can say this is the Bayfront community. So using the paintbrush tool, you can hover over the area and it will show you a preview of what it's going to select. Okay, you simply click and to select, and you can also click and drag. So let's zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to go back to the hand grab so that I can pull this down. And if we go to the paintbrush, we can actually make it smaller so that it only is selecting one census block at a time. And I can go ahead and click block by block. And yeah, some of the blocks include water. Fill them in. Perhaps I want to erase some of them. I will, similarly, the eraser, you can increase the size or shrink it down. Let's make it a little bigger. Let's get rid of some areas that aren't actually bayfront. Let's add some more stuff near the bay. Okay, so we've drawn a ridiculous looking community here, and there's one little block I'm not getting. Fill it in. Let's say I want to submit this. All I do is click save, and I've submitted on the back end a community of interest map. Of course, because mine says demo, it won't be considered, don't worry. But when you create one, hopefully don't use demo in the name of it, and it will be considered. You have two options. Once you've already submitted that map, you can choose to share it publicly if you select share now and share to gallery, or you can save it to come back to it later as a work in progress. This will also share it publicly, but it will share it publicly as a work in progress, as a draft. So you click save as draft. This is how easy this tool is. I encourage everyone to start with this tool. Start by drawing your community of interest. And now that we've drawn this community, I can click on evaluation and I can see that I selected about 33,700 people. This is all of these blocks that I selected in blue, that's their population size, right? And if you recall, our ideal district size is 152,888, which I don't know why I'm memorizing that now, but that probably will change a little bit. So you can see my community is much smaller than the size of a district. You can also use this District R tool to look at some demographic data for the county. And you can do that by clicking data layers. So perhaps we don't want to look at the community that I just drew anymore. We can deselect that. Perhaps I want to look at the current supervisorial district boundaries. There they are. And perhaps I want to look at some demographics. Maybe I want to see where there are families with children under 18 at home. And you can see now that we have from light to dark purple, you can see blocks where there are more children at home. This may be something that you want to consider as part of what your community of interest is. You could look at where Spanish is spoken at home. And then you will see from the totally non-colored blocks have 0% speaking Spanish at home, all the way to 75, 80% in the darker purple areas. This might be one way to define your community of interest. So while this is a very easy tool to use, there is data. There are layers if you want to dig deeper into this tool. And so I think it's a great tool. Fairly easy to use. Just kind of works like Google Maps here. It's going to show you the parks, the highways, and if you zoom in close enough, it will show you roads. So this is pretty useful, I think, and hopefully you'll think so too. Now, you can draw more than one community. You can draw another community simply by adding it. So I click the plus sign there. Now I'm adding another one. So I can draw a second community and it'll draw it in yellow, a third one in green, and I can I can do as many as I want. What I want to highlight is that it's important to describe your community. And actually, if we navigate back to this District R homepage, you can actually see what's been submitted already. We already have 3 community of interest maps that have been submitted. This first one I've been showing just because it's the first one submitted, and it's sort of has a long description that someone has written here. And so this is an example of something entering into the public record that can be useful to the commission. That's District R. I know I'm moving quickly. This meeting is being recorded, so if you want to come back to any of these demos later on your own time, you absolutely are encouraged to do so. All right, let's check out the more advanced tool The more advanced tool does require you to create a user account. It's not that complicated. They just want you to have a username, password, and email, and not be a robot. So there we go. I'm going to log in. And when you first log in, you're basically given a file menu, a menu of plans. So if you have stuff already, you can open it, but most likely you're going to be coming to this the first time, and you're going to want to create a new plan. What is a plan? A plan is 5 districts or district boundaries that you are drawing. So you can start from a totally blank map and draw 5 districts from scratch. What I'm going to show you today is how to start with the existing districts, and perhaps you just want to move some population from one district to another. So that's actually the easiest way to use this tool, which is why that's what I'm showing you. So we'll create demo. You do have to name it because it automatically saves it just to your user account. It doesn't share it at that point. Takes a moment to load. And what you see already here in yellow are the current district boundaries, the district numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the percentages that you see here are their deviation from the ideal population size. Again, there is this panning tool where you can click and drag the map. The difference is, instead of clicking this plus sign to zoom in, you have to click the plus sign and then click on the map, and it will zoom in. You can also draw a rectangle, and it will zoom in just to that area that you select. And if you want to just start by looking at some of the demographic data, you're going to find that under the options window here. If you click options, it will open here, and it will tell you what layers you already see on the map. It will say, look, the gold lines are districts, the current districts. There's railroads, streets, water. Theme is where you're going to see some demographic information options. So for instance, if we wanted to look at where renters are in San Mateo County, we could apply the theme renters. And you can see that the map automatically populates with all of these colors. And you might wonder, what do these colors mean? So there's a key that pops up here at the bottom of the layers window. And it shows you the legend, which is for a heat map. And these are decimal percentages. So the purple, being cold, is census blocks with 0 to 25% renters. All the way up to red, which would be the hottest, which would be 75% to 100% renters in those areas. So that can be helpful. Perhaps that's something we want to consider when we're drawing districts. I'm going to go back to none. And let's see. Let's get rid of our, it's hard to see the city and town boundaries here. If you zoom in, you can see them. If you wanted to look at the school districts, you can also select those under layers. So that's helpful. And you just click these 3 lines, which some people call hamburger, in order to open and close these windows. So I'm going to hide changes. We're going to focus on toolbox, this toolbox window, okay? This toolbox window is where you actually draw your districts and where you make those changes. So let's focus on taking some population from District 3 and giving it to District 4. This is not a suggestion that I'm making. This is just for the purposes of demonstration. So we're gonna want take from District 3 and we're gonna give to District 4, just as an example. So what that means is our target is gonna be District 4. That's where we wanna put the population. So that's gonna get highlighted in green. And then we have to say the source, where is it gonna come from? Well, we're gonna select from District 3 to give to District 4. So sources, this word is in red and it will highlight in red that district. Target is in green and will highlight that in green. Now we have selection is how we're going to actually select the area that we want to move. And we can select by clicking block by block, by clicking this arrow, or you can draw a circle or you can draw a rectangle. I like to draw a rectangle. Usually you're just going to draw 4 lines. So I'll click on that. And you don't really have to worry about the selection. Block is the smallest granularity. I usually select block. So let's jump in and just draw here. See how much population we can pull together here. Okay, so it will highlight in red what we've selected. And if we want to preview the changes, then this will tell us pending changes. I just opened the changes window here. And you can still see on the map what the deviation is. Originally, District 4 slightly underpopulated, District 3 slightly overpopulated. You can see on these pending changes under deviation, you can see that we've reduced that deviation to close to 0 just by taking this area and potentially giving it to District 4 and taking it away from District 3. Again, I'm not suggesting we do that or that this area in any way makes sense to do that. But let's say we want to. It's not actually there yet. It's highlighted. We have to click the check mark and it will move all of those selected areas into District 4. So I'm clicking the check mark. Voila. We have now made changes to the current district boundaries. I can stop there. I can say that's the only goal I had for redistricting, and I can submit that plan. I can describe it. If you want to put your information, you can. I can put demo map, submit it. Oh, it really wants my information. The other thing I want to point out about Maptitude is that this tool is available in 6 languages, and you can find that here at the top. All of the windows and all of the buttons and commands will be translated into these 6 languages. It also has a very useful help that pops up as a sidebar, and you can work through the help. It tells you how to create a user account, how to create a new plan, how to modify the districts, and how to submit your plan. While this tool is more complicated, it is powerful and it can be very satisfying. My suggestion to most people is that they start with District R, and if you want to do more, then try Maptitude. I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint just for this one last slide. And I thank you all for bearing with me through very technical stuff. I want to come back to this conversation about communities of interest and encourage the public to come forward with testimony about their communities and about what they would like to see through through this redistricting process. And with that, I will stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Parks, for that presentation. That was very informative. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
I second.
So we have roll call.
Sure. And for the record, Mr. Chair, we did have Commissioner Monzon Ruiz arrived to the virtual meeting at 6:47 p.m. So we have a
Mr.
motion.
Clerk,
Oh, yes.
sorry, this is Brian. Just wondering, I guess before we open the public hearing for public testimony, just want to make sure there aren't any questions or comments from the members of the commission.
Mr. Chair, would you like to ask if there's any questions from
No.
Commissioner?
Well, yes. Are there any questions from the commission at this point in time regarding the demonstration?
To the chair, I do have a question for Kristen. Kristen, thank you so much for the presentation and making all some improvements and changes. Really appreciate that. Make it very easy, much better for the members of the public to view it and to draw it. One last suggestion and request I have is there a way we can create some templates? Templates based on either the ethnicity, I mean, not ethnicity, but just like, what you're showing, the deviations, whatever is expressed in the, what we captured in the PowerPoint. Similarly, if you can create templates of those, that really helps people to actually see what's going to look like. I know it may be a little difficult, but I think if we can create those templates and actually add them to map R, not the Maptitude, that's a little more complex, that would be very useful. If there is a way to integrate in the first tool, which is very easy to use when you hover over it, if there is a way we can actually, it can display the population size, it can display some of those things that we could do in Maptitude, if that is a possibility at all, that would be great.
Yeah, and I can actually show you that really quickly. I think maybe you weren't here at the last meeting when I did show that, and I didn't show it tonight. So
no worries, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to take up public's time at this time. If you have done it, I'm sorry, maybe somehow I missed that piece, but that's great.
I didn't show it tonight, but
okay, no worries, that's great. Yeah.
But thank you. And I also wanted to let you know that we are working on just short PDF step-by-step instructions for the tools.
Awesome.
And if you have additional feedback, please share it with Justin. And Justin can pass it along to me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Because people can print it and put it next to them, and they can go through the steps and they create those maps. And that's the best part about the cheat sheet. And but looking at those, what you're talking about, that if you can have over it and show those things, that would be ideal. And I really appreciate all the great work you guys at DC is doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the commissioners? Hearing no comments, I'll say let's move on then to open the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Oh, we do have a motion, Mr. Chair.
We had a motion. Okay.
Yes, from Commissioner Vanderpali, seconded by Commissioner Salander. I'll take the roll call. Commissioner Vanderpali,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Mr. Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero, Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
And for the record, the following commissioners were absent: Commissioner Azos, Davis, Dinan, and Guerrero. Public hearing is now open. Members of the public, now is the time if you wish to speak on item 5, presentation that was provided by Ms. Kristen Parks. Please click raise hand feature. And these instructions are being provided in 3 different languages on a different channel through Zoom. So I do see 2 hands raised. First is from Mr. Ray Buenaventura. I'll give you the permission to talk.
Thank you, Suki. And I want to thank the presenter for, I think that was a very informative presentation to the committee. I have 3 questions or comments, however you want to take them, if you could think about answering them. The first is on the data that was received from the census. Is there a way to disaggregate that data? And specifically what I'm referring to is the Asian population. And if there is a way to dissect or disaggregate the data to identify the specific Asian groups from Filipino, Korean, Vietnamese, and groups like that. The second question is, when it comes to identifying or defining a community of interest, is an ethnic minority, now I'm mindful of the laws, the federal and the state laws about not favoring a particular group, but is a community interest, could that be defined as a minority ethnic community in and of itself? And then the third question I have is, I believe, and I'm not going to swear to it, but at the last supervisorial discussion of district lines before, the supervisors were presented with several options that the committee agreed to. And so what I do recall is that the supervisors during the final meeting modified or adjusted those options on the spot, and that was voted in. In other words, the plans that were submitted weren't accepted as submitted, but they were modified without going back to the committee again for consideration and discussion so that there's more input into what the supervisors ultimately modified. So my question is there a way to protect and ensure that the committee, if there are modifications made at the last minute, still has the opportunity to weigh in and give feedback on those last minute modifications? Or is it pretty much at the Board of Supervisors' discretion and it can be adopted without further review by the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raven. Why don't we start in reverse? And I guess I'll ask Brian or David to address his question number 3. And then the other 2, I think maybe Christian could address that.
So, I mean, I can speak historically about what happened, Chair Lawrence, if you like. I mean, obviously, we can't respond to every question raised by a member of the community during public comment, but I'm happy to answer that one. Councilman Buenaventura is right. What did happen back in 2013 was that that committee did recommend a number of maps, and then the Board of Supervisors actually over a series of, I want to say 3 public meetings, did adjust the public maps that the committee originally recommended. That did happen. I think what Ray is, Councilman Buenaventura is asking is, whether or not the commission can prevent the board from doing that or require the board to come back to the committee. And the answer is no. The committee is appointed by the board. Now, ultimately, if the committee wants to comment on what the board does, the committee, just like members of the public, members of the committee can come to the board meetings and comment on what the board does. I'm hoping that's responsive. I mean, I want to talk more, but I kind of don't, because this is a very theoretical issue that may or may not happen. But I can say very simply that he is correct about the history. That is what happened last time. The board did honor the recommendation of the committee, but did make some changes based on some of the very comments that were made already today at the meeting about maintaining the integrity of cities. The map that was recommended by the committee originally divided more cities than the board was comfortable with. And one of the things the board did was put some cities back together.
And Chair Lawrence, I'll just add super quickly to David's last point. I mean, ultimately, the buck stops with the Board of Supervisors. They're on the hook to ensure that the final map that's adopted complies with the substantial population equality requirements, the Civil Voting Rights Act, and kind of the new state law with that kind of rank ordered criteria. So it's ultimately the board's responsibility to make sure that that the maps comply. And also, Ms. Parks talked a little bit about the compacted schedule. One of the reasons why we need time on the back end is so we have exactly that same opportunity this time around. So we're looking to have 3 public meetings before the Board of Supervisors, where the board will be considering taking public comment, public testimony, and finalizing those maps. So the plan is to have a similar opportunity as was had in 2013 before the final map is actually approved and drawn.
Thank you, Brian. Also, thank you, David. That was a couple of questions. Ms. Park, did you want to say anything regarding his request for further? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So to the second question about defining communities of interest, yes, race and ethnicity can be one of the factors that defines the common social and economic interests of your community. Oftentimes it's going to be a myriad of things that bring your community together, but perhaps there is a historically African-American church that many people in the neighborhood attend that has a huge presence in the community. You can draw a community of interest and identify some of those characteristics and features that define your community. So that's absolutely true. However, when we're drawing district lines, right, we are not going to draw any district lines based solely on race or ethnicity. So when we're identifying communities of interest that we want to be in one district, right, as building blocks, then there's really a little bit more flexibility for members of the public to self-describe those communities. And as for disaggregating primarily the Asian population, this is a question that always comes up. It presents some difficulty because we are working primarily with census data. We also do have from the voter data that the California voter database has surname-based data. And one of the confounds that you're probably familiar with is that oftentimes there's a Spanish surname database that often actually picks up a lot of Filipino voters and categorizes them then in, they get categorized as Latino in voter data. So sometimes there are confounds in doing that disaggregation that we're aware of, but we can disaggregate to some extent Asian population by language. So I don't think that is I don't think that's disaggregated in either of these online tools. So that may be something that would be useful for NDC to prepare maps that show that, just as thematic informational review maps that can be reviewed by the commission. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Parks.
Okay, Mr. Chair, next speaker we have is Hector Camacho. I'm going to give you the permission to speak. Please proceed.
Hi there, this is Hector Camacho. Thank you so much for the presentation and the mapping tools. They're really helpful when using, looking at these lines. Not so much questions because I realize this is public hearing, but what would be helpful when helping members of the community draw the lines is if there were a tool to draw in current city boundaries and school district boundaries. I know there's an option to put in the current district boundaries, which is helpful. But I think for residents to be able to see kind of where exactly those lines fall, we have a sense of where our cities end, but I think it's helpful in the visual if that's a possibility. There was also in the presentation a comment about that third set of criteria, one of which was trying to maintain supervisory districts, or not maintain, but at least try to, keep the core of those areas as much as possible. I was curious about that criteria because I think even to Councilmember Buenaventura's comments, when last minute changes are made, that that kind of throws a curveball in the whole process. And so if the first districts were drawn in a way that was not really conducive to what the goals of the communities were, then why does that third goal exist? I'm also looking specifically at a city like South San Francisco that represents, or is the fourth largest city in this county, and is split into two districts, which some would say is a benefit for the city. But I would disagree. When you're lumped with a city of 100,000 people, there's very little impact that that community can have. And when a third of a city's population is pulled into a behemoth of a district, that just completely changes voting dynamics and dilutes the voting power of a community like South San Francisco. And then in the other district, the other 2/3 of the city, the economic dynamics make it that a lot of the wealth and power is concentrated in the southern part of that district, District 1. And so I think those factors have to be taken into consideration when you're splitting up a city as large as South San Francisco. Again, it's the fourth largest city in this county, and its voting power has been diluted. So thank you so much for your service, all members of the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other hands raised from members of the public? We'll allow maybe 10 more seconds. Okay, no other hands are raised, Mr. Chair. Please.
Okay, well, thank you. Seeing there's no more other hearings on the, no more hands raised on the public hearing, I'll move to close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So
I second it.
I move.
Okay, a motion was made by Commissioner Espinoza, seconded by?
Suki, I second it,
Okay,
and I believe.
Perfect. I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Bandrapali,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Chow,
Aye.
Commissioner Guerrero.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Romero
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. And for the record, 3 commissioners were absent, Commissioners Azos, Davis, and Dynan. The public hearing is now closed. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, we're now at item 6, commission member reports. So I'll open the floor for any comments by the commission members.
I do see 2 hands raised, Mr. Espinoza and then Commissioner Albert.
Thank you, Suki. I just wanted to ask a question, and going back to what Trustee Camacho was speaking about, is it possible for us to include current school and special districts into the mapping tools for us to be able to visualize as members of the public and this commissioner begin to build out maps? I think I saw a head nod, but I'm not so sure if that means that that's a yes.
Yeah, sorry, let me jump in here. So in Maptitude, you can select the school districts. You can also select the cities and towns, although they're just really difficult to see. And so I was just trying to take a look if there was a way to make that any more visible. But yes, you can select secondary, elementary school, or unified. So you can select all the school district options under layers, options, layers.
Are there the possibility of special districts? I know there are some countywide special districts that can serve as a reference for the work that we're doing.
Yeah, at this time, there are not any additional special districts. If there are specific ones that you would like to include, I don't know which healthcare districts or something like that. I don't know. let us know, and NDC will see if we can get them, if not into the tool, at least into, we absolutely can add them into the map viewer, right? So there's going to be another page that's not for creating maps, but it's for viewing them, where we can add quite a lot more than we can into these tools, right? Because the tools are created by other vendors. So if there are specific special districts you'd like to see, please let us know.
Thanks, Kristen. And just for clarification for everyone, is the way to do that sending it to Suki, or is there another way to do that?
I think I would suggest you send it to Justin.
Okay.
And you know, folks, just as a reference, if you go to the LAFCO, San Mateo LAFCO site, it'll list all of the there's like 40 special districts in the county. Some of them are countywide, some are not. And so if you identify special districts of particular interest, you know, we'll work with NDC to see whether we can get them in there. I don't know, through the chair, Commissioner Lawrence, I don't know whether or not you want to have Kristen demonstrate how you would layer the school districts, or whether folks are fine with that explanation, but I defer to you and to Kristen.
I'm open to if the commissioners want, if she's available. You're going to take us through that. Is that a exercise that you're prepared to do tonight?
Chair Lawrence, if I may, I would ask that if we are allowed to spend a few minutes on that.
Sure. Kristen, I'll give you the mic.
All right, I am sharing my screen again, and I have Maptitude open here. And what I opened is just a totally blank map. So let me go back just so you can see. Totally blank map here. Rather than starting with current districts, we're starting with blank map. And if you go to the options window here, options, you have options and layers. And I'm just trying to show you, okay, defaults to options, I'm clicking layers. What this is this legend here is showing you what's already there. So in this particular version, I know the one I just showed you, the district lines were gold. Here, the district lines are green. That's because I'm not starting with the current districts, I'm starting with a blank map. In theory, the cities and towns are this brown color. I'm finding them very difficult to see. Let's see, if I turn that off on layers, if I turn off cities and towns, perhaps, there we go, then you see them disappear. So they're labeled in brown: Brisbane, South San Francisco, Millbrae, Burlingame. And you can see here it easily in the bay, in the water, where it's not super useful for us to see it. But if you watch those, when I deselect cities and towns, those lines disappear. So they are here. They're just quite difficult to see. We can maybe get rid of some stuff to make it easier. But it's still relatively hard, I think, to see the city and town boundaries. There they are, kind of. But then
is there no way to change the color? Like, it seems like you can't change the color of the lines. It's just whatever map sets as a default.
That's what my understanding is. I will certainly be asking that question because I find this frustrating. So let me show you how to get the schools. They're just other layers here that you check, and they actually are ones that you can see fairly easily, thank goodness, right? Okay, so if I click secondary school districts, obviously what happens is that some of these boundaries are on top of each other because it's, there we go. So it's the dashed purple line. Unified district school districts are going to be a dashed red line. Elementary school districts, right? And they are labeled. And also under options, you can increase that label size. I think it defaults to being rather small. You probably want to pull it all the way up to 100 so that you can actually see what that is you're looking at. And there we go. So I just clicked a spot in the Bay, which is ridiculous, but it is going to tell me, for instance, what school district it's in. So if I lived here in the Bay, I would be in the San Bruno Park Elementary School District. I would be in San Mateo Union High School District, right? Oh, let's see if it tells me any special districts. No, this is just district demographics. So clicking that little info button can pull up some of this information for you if you're having trouble seeing it on the map. So that's, I guess, another little trick that we can use to get around these difficult lines, is that you can click on the eye icon and just click a spot, okay? And it will pop up a window. In that window, you can see some of these things. Maybe that didn't pop up in a city or a town.
Kristen, I have a question. So if we do request any of the special districts to be added, they'll be added as layers that we can utilize as you're showing here?
Yes, but not on Maptitude. It will be on an ArcGIS map. Let me show you really quickly what that looks like for the city of Pasadena. It will be San Mateo, but it will look like this, an interactive review map where you select the layers. And it can be right here. So that is what that will look like. And I will be creating that shortly for San Mateo, because once we start showing you the maps created by the public, we will be showing them to you in an interactive layer in a page just like this. Yeah, so there was one thing I also wanted to show quickly in District R, if you don't mind me showing it very, very quickly, is the population info. Under data layers here, I know Commissioner Chow had asked about this. Total population we can display as circles. And I just check the box and it does that. So there are different things that you can look at in both of the tools in terms of demographics. But everything that's in these tools can also be in that review map that we should have up for you in a couple weeks. And the review map will live here on the draft maps page. So hopefully that helps answer some of your questions. And I know members of the public probably very much appreciate you asking these questions.
Ms. Parks, sorry, Chair Lawrence, through the chair, very briefly, would that ability to toggle kind of between those layers be included in that kind of short explanatory document you're going to be providing for members of the public? The cheat sheet?
Now that you mention it, I will make sure it is.
Commissioner Over.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. I just wanted to make a brief comment about something I thought about listening to some of the public comment we got tonight, which was great. I'm glad we're finally getting a lot of public comment. And it has to do with the notion of how we're going to balance various factors in coming up with our recommendations. You know, one of the things that, and I'll just speak for myself, one of the things that I often tried to do when I was on the San Carlos City Council is you do have competing interests. You know, for example, on this commission, I represent, in some sense, the people of San Carlos. But I also have a duty towards the people of everybody else in San Mateo County, throughout the county, to try and come up with as good a system as I can for them, good a recommendation as I can. And at the end of the day, in practice, what that often leads you to do is to come up with what I call a least bad set of recommendations. And their least bad meaning, it's not that people are trying to do bad things. It's just that to do something really good for one part of San Mateo County might be to do something really bad for another part of San Mateo County. And a better outcome is actually to do less good for both parts than they might each individually prefer. And I suspect, although I do not know because I was not involved in the earlier deliberations years ago about making recommendations on boundaries, I suspect that's part of the reason why the commission at the time recommended something and the Board of Supervisors ended up doing something else. They had a difference of opinion as to what was the least bad thing that they could do. So I encourage the public to keep us on our toes by challenging us to think as creatively as we can, and at the same time sort of just mention to them that if nobody gets everything that they want, that's actually probably a good outcome. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Obert. Are there any other comments by the commissioners? Great, then I'll move to item 7, discussion of the next hearing dates.
Justin, are you going to take that one?
Sorry, yes, I had unmute button. So thank you. I think everyone is aware we've got one more of our in-district or district-specific themed meetings this Thursday, and that will be our District 3 themed district workshop. After that, we've got a bit of a break, and you should have all received a message last week trying to schedule 2 meetings in October. Between now and those October meetings, we will continue to collect public comment. We will continue to collect any maps submitted by the public, any comment about communities of interest. It will all be available to the commissioners. It will also all be posted on the website. And then at those October meetings, the commission will actually start discussing specific maps, specific lines, specific comments that have been received. I'd just like to note that our outreach is going to pivot in that way as well. We will not just be promoting folks to participate and make comment at this meeting, and thank you to all the members of the public who commented tonight, but also just encouraging the multiple ways that the public can comment and provide input to the board, to this commission and the Board of Supervisors. I think I mentioned last time that we were setting up a way to collect comment by social media, which is now up and running, and we are already starting to receive a modest number, but starting to receive comments by social media. And so you'll see our outreach materials will specify that folks just need to use the hashtag SMC District Lines on Facebook or Twitter, and that's how the public can get their comments included as part of the record of this commission. That's hashtag SMC District Lines, which you will see on the materials that we share with you going forward. So you all should have received, I think that was a Google or Doodle poll for trying to identify your availability. If you could all just complete that, then we will go ahead and finalize the dates of those October meetings.
Thank you, Justin. One last thing before I adjourn. Will there be a note to the commissioners to let them know that we did receive the maps that were expected today? How will we know that that information has become available?
Yes, we can notify, we will notify the commissioners when the mapping tools have loaded in them the full data from the final census data.
Outstanding, great, thank you. Hearing there's no more comments, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Good night. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. Good night.
Thank you all. The time is now 8 p.m. and the meeting is off the record and adjourned.
Bye, Suki.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.